Welcome to Solar Age, the podcast that shines a light on the path to a brighter, more sustainable future. Join us as we explore the transformative power of technology in creating a solarpunk world.
Hey Solarpunk fans, welcome back to the Solar Age podcast. We're diving deep today into something I know is close to all our hearts. How technology can actually deliver that bright, abundant future we're all working towards.
It's a big question for sure.
Yeah. And you guys shared Dr. Hannah Ritchie's Big Think talk with us. And honestly, her data-driven optimism, it's contagious. I love how she doesn't shy away from the climate challenges, but really digs into how we already have the tools to solve them.
That urgent optimism framing is really refreshing, isn't it? Instead of just getting bogged down in all the problems, she goes straight to the solutions.
Exactly.
It's like, look, we've tackled huge environmental issues before, right? Let's learn from that.
Right. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of climate change, but she reminds us that we've flipped the script on big problems before.
For sure, we have.
Okay, but let's get to the heart of it. Those pesky greenhouse gas emissions. Where do we even begin to tackle those?
Well, Ritchie breaks it down into 4 key areas: energy, transport, food, and construction.
Okay, that makes sense.
And what's really interesting is how she presents these not as separate silos, but as like interconnected systems, where innovation in one area can ripple out and affect the others.
So let's unpack this.
Sure.
Starting with energy. It's pretty clear that ditching fossil fuels is step 1.
Right.
I was actually surprised by how Ritchie champions not just solar and wind, but also hydropower, geothermal, and even nuclear as part of the solution. It's about diversifying that energy portfolio.
And that's where the solarpunk thinking shines through, you know? Not being dogmatic about any one technology, but embracing a whatever works approach.
I love that.
But of course, one of the first concerns that people raise is land use, you know? Won't we need to cover the entire planet in solar panels and wind turbines?
Yeah, I've heard that one too. But Ritchie's data, it actually paints a very different picture.
Oh, yeah.
To meet global electricity needs with solar, we'd need less than 1% of the world's land.
Wow.
And that's possible because of the incredible leaps in solar panel technology.
Of course, yeah.
We're getting more and more energy from smaller and smaller areas.
Exactly. And for wind, it's about 5%.
Okay.
What many people don't realize is that wind turbines actually have a surprisingly small footprint. So you can still use the land between them.
Right.
You know, we're not talking about this massive land grab. It's more about integrating these technologies into our existing landscapes.
Yeah, it really flips the script on that fear-mongering narrative, doesn't it?
It really does.
Now, another concern I often hear, especially from our Solar Age listeners, is about all the materials needed for all this green energy infrastructure.
Right.
Lithium, copper, rare earth elements. It feels like we're constantly hearing about shortages.
It's a valid concern, but Ritchie's research suggests we need to look a little deeper.
Okay, so we've got the land. It seems like we might have the materials.
Right.
But what about the environmental impact of all the mining?
Yeah.
It feels like a catch-22, you know? We're trying to solve one environmental problem, but potentially creating another one.
Absolutely, and Ritchie doesn't shy away from that at all.
Good.
But it's about perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're currently extracting something like 15 billion tons of fossil fuels every year.
Wow.
So the amount of minerals we need for a green energy transition is significant, but it's actually dwarfed by that number. It really makes you think about those trade-offs, you know? The immediate impact of mining versus the long-term consequences of unchecked climate change.
Yeah. It's about choosing the lesser of two evils, but also actively working to minimize those impacts.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of trade-offs, what about the cost of all this?
Yeah.
Renewables have to be affordable to really take off, right?
Precisely. But here's the good news. The costs of solar and wind energy have plummeted over the past decade. They're now cost competitive with, and in many cases even cheaper than, fossil fuels. This is a real game changer.
That's amazing.
It makes that transition not just environmentally sound, but also economically viable.
And that's where I think the Solarpunk vision really clicks with people. It's not just about sacrifice or austerity. It's about using technology to create a world that's both sustainable and prosperous.
For sure.
So, we've covered energy, but transport is a big one too, right? I think 1/5 of global CO2 emissions comes from that sector, mostly from all those gas-guzzling cars.
Yeah, it's a tough one to crack. But there are multiple levers we can pull here. Reducing car usage is definitely a good starting point. Walking, cycling, robust public transport. But those require some systemic changes like better urban planning, investment in public infrastructure.
I'm curious to hear your take on this. Cars aren't going away anytime soon, are they? What about electric vehicles?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of buzz about them, but also concerns about their environmental impact, especially battery production.
Yeah, no doubt. Electric car production, especially battery manufacturing, can have a higher initial carbon footprint. But what's interesting is that this carbon debt is actually offset within the first 2 years of driving an electric car.
2 years. So after that initial period, they're cleaner.
Much cleaner. Over their lifetime, they emit 50 to 67% less CO2 compared to gasoline or diesel cars. And here's the kicker. As the electric grid gets cleaner, that gap keeps widening, which makes them an even more compelling solution.
So from a Solarpunk perspective, the future of transportation looks pretty electrifying.
It does.
But let's shift gears to something even more fundamental. Food. It's not always obvious, but food production accounts for a quarter of global emissions. Where are all those emissions coming from?
Well, it's multifaceted. When people think about land use, they often think about urban sprawl.
Sure.
But farming actually occupies nearly half of the world's habitable land.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that much.
It's huge, and it's not just CO2 we're talking about either.
Right.
Agriculture is a major source of methane and nitrous oxide, which are both potent greenhouse gases.
Okay, so how do we make our food systems more sustainable and, dare I say, more abundant? Richie points to increasing productivity, shifting our diets, and reducing food waste. What do those look like in action? Let's start with productivity. How do we produce more food with less of an environmental footprint?
Well, technology is definitely key here.
Okay.
We can leverage things like precision agriculture, which uses data and sensors to optimize farming practices, or we can explore really innovative approaches like vertical farming, growing crops in stacked layers indoors.
Like a skyscraper full of food.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
These technologies allow us to boost yields while minimizing land use and resource consumption.
It sounds like something straight out of a Solarpunk story. High-tech farms producing delicious food in harmony with nature. It's amazing. And what about dietary shifts? How can our food choices make a difference?
Plant-based foods generally have a much lower carbon footprint than meat and dairy.
Okay.
It's not about everyone becoming vegan overnight, but even small reductions in meat consumption can have a significant impact.
Right. And let's not forget food waste. All those resources used to produce food that ends up in landfills. It's a massive waste of energy and emissions.
It really is. Reducing food waste is one of the most impactful ways to shrink our footprint, for sure. It requires action at every level, from producers and retailers down to us, the consumers.
That's all of us.
Exactly. Things like being mindful of portion sizes, proper food storage, composting, those are all simple but powerful steps we can take.
Great points. So we've talked about powering our world, getting around, and even feeding ourselves in a more sustainable way. That brings us to the final pillar, construction and manufacturing. What are the main sources of emissions in that sector?
It boils down to two main components. First, there's the energy used during production,
Okay.
which we can address by transitioning to clean energy sources.
Makes sense.
But then there are also emissions from material production itself, things like the CO2 released during cement manufacturing.
Cement. I wouldn't have thought of that as a major source of emissions. What makes it so problematic?
Cement production is incredibly energy intensive, and it releases a ton of CO2.
Okay.
It's a critical part of our built environment, but it also presents a real challenge.
So how do we decarbonize something as fundamental as cement production? It feels like we're talking about reinventing the very foundation of our cities.
It is complex, but Richie highlights three key strategies: using less cement, capturing and storing those emissions, and developing alternative materials.
Using less cement. How do you even build without cement?
It's not about eliminating it entirely. It's
Okay.
about optimizing its use.
Okay.
We can explore building designs that require less cement or use lower cement compositions in our concrete mixes. And there are some exciting developments in alternative building materials that could potentially replace cement altogether, in certain applications at least.
So using less cement is one approach. What about capturing and storing those emissions from cement plants? Is that even viable?
It's another really promising avenue. Carbon capture and storage technology lets us trap the CO2 released during production. Then we can either store it underground or even repurpose it. This technology has huge potential, not just for cement, but for decarbonizing other industrial processes as well.
Okay, so option 2 is carbon capture. And the third strategy is using alternative materials altogether.
Right. Some companies are doing incredible work with alternative source rocks, like calcium silicate, to make cement without generating CO2 as a byproduct. These innovations could revolutionize the construction industry.
Wow.
But here's the key. For any of these solutions to become mainstream, they need to be cost-effective. That's the challenge and opportunity for the future of construction, making these sustainable alternatives not just environmentally sound, but also financially viable.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From energy and transport to food and even the buildings we live in. It's a lot to process. But what I really appreciate about Richie's urgent optimism is that it doesn't sugarcoat the challenges. You know, it acknowledges them, but then it goes on to showcase all these incredible solutions we already have.
We really do.
It really gets you thinking, what if we actually pull this off?
Right.
What if we create this amazing solarpunk future?
That's the power of the Solarpunk mindset, isn't it? It's not naive techno-optimism. It's about acknowledging the complexities while still believing that a brighter future is possible.
I love that.
And that future is being shaped right now by innovators, entrepreneurs, and everyday people like us who are choosing to embrace these clean disruptions.
And that's why I want to bring it back to our Solar Age listeners. You're the ones who are actively building that future, the ones who are driving this change. We want to hear from you. What are you already doing to embrace a more sustainable lifestyle? What questions do you have? Let's keep this conversation going. Let us know in the comments below. We're all in this together. And it's through this kind of dialogue, collaboration, and shared vision that we can actually bring about that solarpunk future we all dream of. A future that's abundant, equitable, and truly sustainable.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You know, one thing that really struck me about Richie's talk is how she ties together all these different things.
Right.
Energy, transport, food, construction.
It's all connected.
Yeah, and it highlights how solarpunk thinking, it's not just about isolated solutions, but about seeing how everything is connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That systems thinking is so crucial.
It is.
Recognizing that a breakthrough in one area can create this ripple effect and accelerate progress in other areas.
Totally.
It's like this positive feedback loop.
Exactly.
Driving us toward a more sustainable and abundant future.
And that's where this whole idea of clean disruption comes in, right?
Yeah, it's not just swapping out dirty tech for clean tech.
No, it's deeper than that.
It's about a fundamental shift in our relationship with technology, with the planet, and ultimately with each other.
I love that framing.
It's about reclaiming technology as a force for good, a tool to actually create a world that works for everyone.
Right, not just a select few.
And what's exciting is that we're already seeing this clean disruption happening.
We are.
Across so many different sectors.
Exactly. Just look at renewable energy.
Yeah.
I mean, the pace of innovation there is mind-blowing.
It really is.
Costs are plummeting, efficiency is going through the roof, and new technologies are popping up all the time.
It is like a gold rush.
It is.
But instead of digging up fossil fuels, we're harnessing the power of the sun, the wind, the earth itself.
It's that shift from scarcity to abundance that really defines the solarpunk vision.
And it's not just about energy either.
No.
We're seeing these kinds of disruptions in transportation, agriculture, even construction.
It's everywhere.
It's like this wave of innovation.
I like that.
Washing over the entire planet, reshaping our world.
In ways we couldn't have imagined a decade ago.
It's so true.
And it's a wave we can ride. By embracing these disruptions, supporting those companies and organizations who are leading the charge, and making conscious choices in our own lives, we can all work together to steer humanity toward that brighter future.
It's about recognizing that the choices we make today, big and small, they really do have the power to shape the world.
They do.
It's about believing that a better future is possible, and then actually taking action to make it happen.
And that's where that solarpunk spirit comes in, right?
Yeah.
That unwavering optimism, the belief that we can use our ingenuity to overcome even the toughest challenges.
It's about looking beyond the problems.
Yeah, sure.
And focusing on those solutions.
Right.
The possibilities. The potential.
The potential for a brighter and more sustainable future.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me, Richie's talk, was how she really emphasized how interconnected these solutions are. It's not just about each individual technology, but understanding how they can work together
Yes.
to create this more holistic, more resilient system.
That's such a core principle of solarpunk thinking.
It is.
Embracing systems thinking, recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
And when you start to see those connections,
Yeah.
it becomes so clear that solving one problem can create these ripple effects,
Right.
creating positive change in other areas too.
Like what?
Like how transitioning to electric vehicles not only cuts down on transport emissions,
Right.
but it also creates this huge demand for renewable energy,
Oh, yeah.
which actually accelerates the clean energy transition even further.
It's like a virtuous cycle.
Exactly.
I love that.
And that's just one example.
Right.
Think about vertical farms,
Mm-hmm.
growing food locally.
Yeah,
It reduces transportation emissions, cuts down on food waste,
for sure.
or using alternative building materials like bamboo.
Oh, yeah.
It reduces the carbon footprint of construction, but it also creates new economic opportunities
Right.
in rural communities.
It's amazing.
It's like these clean disruptions
Yeah.
are weaving together this tapestry of solutions.
Right.
A more beautiful, more sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
and more equitable world.
And it's a world we're creating right now.
We are.
Through our choices,
Yes.
our actions,
Yes.
and our commitment to a brighter future.
And that's what makes the solar punk movement so inspiring, right?
It really is.
It's not about waiting for someone else to fix everything.
Nope.
It's about taking ownership,
Yeah.
being proactive, working together to create the world we actually want to live in.
And that's what I want to leave our listeners with today.
Okay?
You are the ones shaping the future.
Mhm.
You are the ones making this change happen.
Our listeners,
Yes. Your choices, your actions, your voices,
they all matter.
they all matter.
So let's keep exploring,
Yes.
keep innovating,
Mm-hmm.
keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Let's do it.
Let's embrace these clean disruptions.
Yeah.
Not with fear,
Right.
but with excitement and purpose.
Because the future we're building, it's not just about survival.
No.
It's about thriving.
And it's a future worth fighting for.
It is.
A future worthy of our dreams.
So let's go out and make it happen.
Yes.
Let's build that solar punk world together.
It's amazing to see how solarpunk has gone from
Yeah.
like a niche literary genre
Yeah.
to a real-world philosophy,
It really is.
a way of looking at the future
Right.
with hope
Yeah.
and this determination to create positive change.
It speaks to something deeper, I think.
Yeah.
This yearning for a future that's not just high tech, but also ecologically balanced
Right.
and socially just.
Yeah, it's got to be all of those things.
And what's exciting is that it's resonating with people from all walks of life.
That's a good point.
It's not just for,
Yeah, it's not just for the sci-fi geeks anymore.
Exactly. We're seeing artists, writers, architects,
Entrepreneurs,
engineers, everyone
all these creative minds
coming together.
inspired by this vision of a brighter future.
It's like a collective awakening, you know?
Yeah.
Like we're realizing that the old ways of doing things,
Mhm.
they're just not working anymore.
Totally.
And it's time for something new.
A new paradigm.
Yes.
Yeah.
One that puts people and the planet first.
And what I think is really empowering about Solarpunk
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not just about these huge gestures or top-down solutions.
Right.
It's about the choices we make every day,
It is.
the things we buy,
Yeah.
the way we live our lives.
Absolutely.
Each little decision, no matter how small,
Mm-hmm.
can contribute
Yep.
to this shift.
To a more sustainable and abundant future.
Exactly.
It's about reclaiming our power, you know?
Yeah, our agency.
Yeah, recognizing that we're not powerless.
Right, we're not just victims.
No, we have the knowledge
The tools, the technology.
and the will to create change.
Yes. That's what's so inspiring about this whole movement.
Yeah.
It's not about waiting for someone else to fix things.
Yeah. That's right.
It's about getting to work,
Doing it ourselves.
building that better future, brick by brick.
Solar panel by solar panel.
Right. I love that.
It's that do-it-yourself spirit.
Exactly. Understanding that we're not just passengers on this spaceship.
We're the crew.
We're the crew. We're responsible for keeping it running.
And that brings us back to Richie's core message.
Mm,
Urgent optimism.
yes.
It's not about ignoring the problems. It's about facing them head on
Right.
with that can-do spirit.
And knowing that we actually have the solutions.
Yes.
The challenge now is putting them into practice,
Mm-hmm.
scaling them up, making them accessible to everyone.
And that's where the real work begins.
It is.
It's work that needs all of us
It does.
to participate
To contribute.
with our skills, our passions, our creativity.
Whether you're an engineer designing these cutting-edge renewable systems,
We're an entrepreneur.
yeah, developing sustainable business models, or even just a conscious consumer,
Right.
making choices every day.
Every little bit counts.
Action matters.
It's about understanding.
Yeah.
We're all connected.
We are.
Our choices have ripple effects. They
Yeah.
influence the whole system.
And that's what I want to leave our listeners with today.
Okay.
What role do you want to play
Yeah, think about it.
in building this solar punk future?
What actions are you taking?
Yeah, to create a world that's more sustainable, more just, more abundant.
For everyone.
Let's continue this conversation.
Yes, please.
Share your thoughts, your ideas
Your questions.
down in the comments below.
We're all on this journey together.
We are.
Exploring, discovering.
The future isn't something that just happens to us.
No.
It's something we create.
we do.
And with every action we take,
Yeah.
every choice we make,
Mm-hmm.
we're shaping the world.
So let's choose wisely.
Yes.
Let's choose boldly.
Let's choose to build a future
Mm-hmm.
that we can all be proud of.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Solarpunk solutions.
It's been a pleasure.
We look forward to continuing the conversation with you all.
Yes, we do.
Until next time, stay curious
Stay engaged.
and keep those Solarpunk dreams alive.
We'll see you next.
If you enjoyed this episode of The Solar Age, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you won't miss any future episodes. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about what resonated with you or share any ideas you'd like us to explore in upcoming episodes. Let's keep the conversation about a brighter future going.